Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here in this room there are two people, including a brother helping with the camera. And it's a perfect example of the topic that I want to address today. The power of words. Boring. What does it have to say? When people see this poster, it's like, I don't even know what it's talking about, but it's not entertaining in the list, so I better not attend it. I can have better plans. I can have dinner with my friends. I can go back and watch some television on Netflix. I can watch a new TV series or a new movie. I can even just go on Facebook and watch the recent events in Hong Kong, those videos of confrontation between protesters and police, very eliciting, very fun to watch, very emotional. And I spend time easily and much more happily doing those activities than to attend a sharing that addresses a very generic and an irrelevant topic, the power of words. What does it have to do with me? It doesn't even seem to be related to Islam at all. So one of the first stories to be mentioned in the Quran was the creation of Adam alayhi salam. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يَفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And when your Lord said to the angels that indeed I will place upon the earth a Khalifa, a representative, an ambassador, they said, are you going to place upon the earth such a creature that will create bloodshed and corruption, while we are already declaring your perfection and expressing our admiration towards you? He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, indeed I know that which you don't know. There are many lessons to be extracted from this one ayah. First of all, the fact that the angels doubted the integrity of human beings already showed that there are innate deficiencies in human beings, because the angels witnessed the creation of human beings. They existed before Adam alayhi salam existed. So they saw the whole process of how human beings were manufactured, and because of that, they were suspicious of this new creature, because it has the tendencies, tremendous tendencies for evil, as they mentioned, bloodshed and corruption, and there is ample evidence throughout human history until this day that we do that all the time. So the angels doubted human beings. Assalamu alaikum. Since there are so few audience, I would have time to greet everyone who comes, inshallah. So the angels doubted the integrity of human beings. And there's another interesting point to note. After they said, why would you do this? Why would you place such a creature on earth? Then they said, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. And while we, at the same time, we are already declaring your perfection. We are already worshipping you. We are already praising you. So, in other words, the angels are implying that the existence of any creature, in their perspective, should be declaring the perfection of Allah and worshipping Allah. Why else would anything exist? So this is angels' way of telling human beings before we even existed that your job is to worship Allah and to praise Him. Otherwise, you have no point existing. Otherwise, your existence has no meaning. Subhanallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quoted the words of angels, which actually stated the same meaning as وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The angels told us, why would you exist if you don't declare the perfection of Allah? And we're already doing that, so you're actually not needed, by the way. Human beings, if you don't exist, Allah is still praised by us. You're not needed. So you're nothing really, the angels are saying. Although not in a disrespectful way, because they don't have free will. They're just making this objective assumption and conclusion. And then Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Indeed, I know that which you don't know. This response has two parts. The first part is, Allah Azza wa Jal didn't deny what the angels doubted. He didn't say, no, you're wrong. He didn't deny the fact that human beings have tendency for evil. So in a way, he actually acknowledged what you said was true, but not entirely. there's another part to this response. I know that which you don't know. So that means there is something apart from the observable traits of human beings, apart from the things that you can see about human beings. There's something there inside human beings that can prevent them from this tendency, that can direct them away from their desire for bloodshed and corruption, that can actually change them or make them conscious of this tendency so that they can control them and improve themselves. And then we are curious, what is this thing then? What is this extra component that Allah Azza wa Jalla said the angels even don't know, but will be so beneficial to human beings that we can, save ourselves from the innate tendency towards evil? We would expect that Allah will mention my guidance, my revelation, my prophets and messengers. Allah probably would mention my knowledge, right? My divine wisdom. All of these things which we consider indispensable for human beings to be good. And all of these were mentioned, but later on in the same passage. What was immediately mentioned after this ayah was وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, and He taught Adam alayhi salam all of the names, all names. So sometimes you see translation, He taught Adam the names of all things. This is an incorrect translation. Allah Azza wa Jalla didn't say al-asma'a kulli shay. He said al-asma'a kullaha, all names. So He taught Adam all names, and this has many implications. First of all, Professor Jeffrey Lam noticed that Allah said allama, He taught. So when there's someone teaching, then there must be someone learning. It's a two-way process. So first of all, human being is a learning creature, and this is very different from animals. Some radical atheists like Richard Dawkins would consider human beings no different from animals, except for the fact that we are just more advanced in terms of our evolutionary trajectory. But that's not true, because the learning of human beings is evidently different and distinct from that of animals. They say that animals also learn, but animals actually, there are multiple differences. First of all, the purpose is different. Animals learn to better adapt to the environment. It's for survival. Everything they learn is for survival. It's for live better. But human beings learn things that are not at all relevant to their survival. We have a lot of professors of sociology and high mathematics that really doesn't directly affect our daily life. We have professors pondering upon philosophy for 5 decades, and that doesn't make their life better. Sometimes it makes their life more miserable. We have academics like Jordan B. Peterson, who speaks politically incorrect terms because he's an academic and he has integrity to speak what he finds to be true. And that gets him death threats, right? So from an evolutionary point of view, the learning that many human beings do is worse for their survival. It's bad for their survival. It invites danger, actually. It invites a decrease in prosperity in life. So that's the purpose is different. Human beings learn because of curiosity. We are by nature curious. And human beings learn to find the purpose of our existence. So human beings is a meaning-seeking creature. This is also different from animals. You never see a bear asking another bear, like, why are we here in this jungle? No, they just accept the fact. They just accept the reality of life. But human beings want to know why. Why is this the case? How is this the case? But animals don't ask these questions. And actually, the process of learning is also different from human beings and animals. Animals learn by conditioned reflection. They call that conditional reflex. Basically, it's a situation, a response, and if this response is good, it gives me reward, and then I repeat that. If this response gives me a bad result, then I reject that. So it's basically just a trial and error process. But human beings learn by much deeper mechanisms. We learn by thinking. We learn by categorization. We learn by imitation. We learn by, there are many different logical pathways that can lead to knowledge. It's not only trial and error. Actually, we talk about very abstract ideas that you cannot truly experience. For some people, truth is a concept that you can hardly experience. What does it mean to be upon the truth? What does it mean to be practicing truth? It's hard to grasp. So it's not really a conditional reflex in the natural environment. Rather, it's a very deep cognitive process. So this is also different. So anyway, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. First of all, Allah is saying that human beings is a learning creature, and this learning capacity can prevent them from the tendencies of evil. That's the first thing. And the second thing, why did he teach him all of the names? And in Arabic, ism means name. It also means attribute or characteristic, property. It also means the nature of things. So Allah taught Adam in an academic term epistemology. Epistemology is the way of looking at things, the way of analyzing and understanding things. He taught Adam epistemology and the attributes of all things, the nature of all things, the properties of all things. I would like to read a passage from a book that I've been reading recently called Amusing Ourselves to Death. It's a very good book. I will mention it later on as well. But for now, I'll just read a passage about name. Okay, this is written by a non-Muslim. I think he's a Christian author. He was basically comparing the two different forms of communication. One is photograph. The other is language. Right? So sometimes people claim that photograph is also a kind of language. It also communicates. It also shares information, and sometimes they even consider photograph a better way of communication because it's more vivid, it's more visually impactful, it gives you more direct feeling. But then the author compared photograph and language, and he basically discovered many defects in photograph. First of all, it's decontextualized. It doesn't relate to anything before it, anything after it. It is a frozen moment. It's a frozen here and now. It's discontinuous. It doesn't really relate to you in a profound way. It is just a parcel of reality that is isolated in time and space. And then he compared that to language. And a photograph doesn't involve high-level cognitive process. You don't have to think about what you see. You see what you see. Maybe there are some implications of thinking. You might relate it to your personal experience, but very limited. He said, but language, on the other hand, he mentioned that the photograph presents the word as object because it's concrete, it's particular, but language presents the word as idea, as things that you have to sort of categorize by yourself and summarize by yourself. So he said, for even the simplest act of naming a thing is an act of thinking. To name a thing is an act of thinking, of comparing one thing with others, selecting certain features in common, ignoring what is different, and making an imaginary category. There is no such thing in nature as man or tree, because in nature there's a man, another man, many men, or this tree, that tree. There's no such thing as man as a concept in nature. It doesn't exist. Man only exists in language and in our thinking. There's no such thing as tree. So he said that the universe offers no such categories or simplifications, only flux and infinite variety. The photograph documents and celebrates the particularities of this infinite variety. Language makes them comprehensible, right? So the fact that we can use language actually makes this infinite word graspable by human beings. We can understand a place that we've never been to by just reading a book. I've never been to India, but if I read a book about India, I can know a lot of details about India. And some people say that vision can also do the videos can also do that. I'll show you how it's not the case later on. So naming a thing is an act of thinking. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah taught him the names of all things, so he enabled human beings to think, and particularly abstract thinking, abstraction. This is something very powerful. As I mentioned, truth, or love, or justice, right, or compassion, or mercy. These are ideas that cannot be easily pictured. These are ideas that are very abstract, but human beings are able to express these ideas. And then, of course, there's the foundation of all of this, language. So you can also say that Allah Azza wa Jal taught human beings language, which is, by the way, so in the 20th century there was a linguistic revolution. Prior to that, most of the linguists and scholars consider language learning, language acquisition, also a process of conditioned reflex. So, I just imitate what others say, and if it's right, they give me positive reinforcement. If it's wrong, they give me negative reinforcement. So they consider it a conditional action. But then when Noam Chomsky and others like Dr. Jeckendorf, they had proposed this idea of universal grammar, and it's a very powerful proposal. It has been more and more proven by medical experiments. So they mentioned what is a universal grammar. It is basically that human beings have an innate capacity, an innate mental faculty to learn language that animals don't have. And an example of that is if you take an African child from a tribe, from an ancient tribe, a very backward, isolated from civil society, and you bring him to Hong Kong as an infant baby. And if this African baby grows up in Hong Kong, he would have no problem speaking Cantonese fluently and expressing any ideas that a Hong Kong person can express because he has universal grammar. He has that innate capacity to learn any language in the world as long as the environment is providing. Comparing that to a chimpanzee, which evolutionaries people think are close relatives to human beings, bring a chimpanzee baby to Hong Kong and let the chimpanzee grow up in Hong Kong, he will still not be able to speak any language. Not even Ngai. That's not even possible for a chimpanzee. So this shows that human beings have a even almost mysterious capacity, because Dr. Jackendorf also said that there's no evidence at all in human history that language ever evolved. There's no evidence for the evolution of language, right? So he said the earliest discovered traces of language already displayed the full variety of expressiveness of language, although they were perhaps not in the same format. For example, the Egyptian language was in the format of symbols, right? But it already had a grammar in it. It already had a syntax. It already had a proper way of arranging words. But they've done experiments with chimpanzees. They managed to teach chimpanzees about 150 words, vocabulary, but they are not able to produce grammar. So they know words by linking object with sound, or object with signs, actually sign language. So they know, some gesture means apple, some gesture means food, but they cannot say I want food. They don't have subject, verb, object. They don't have this idea. So this is also something that actually disproves the Darwinian evolution, or at least a large part of it, language. And it's becoming more and more mysterious. So even the linguist, Dr. Jackendorf, actually said there's not one but many missing links. So the discovery of universal grammar in the last century actually was a major strike on the evolutionists. It's a proof for creation. It's a proof for at least external intervention in the selective advantage of human beings. Okay, so now وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَائِهَا إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. So then Allah taught taught Adam ﷺ all names, including justice, truth, honesty, these abstract things. And then He presented everything to angels and said, "You name them if you're truthful. So if you were right about what you said about human beings, then you name these things." What is the logic here? Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying basically because human beings, Adam ﷺ, is able to now name all things, and by extension learn things, and by extension think abstractly. Because of this, they are not exactly the same as what you presumed. They are not that evil creating creature that you presumed. So the logic here is these things are what set human beings apart from their natural tendency towards corruption and bloodshed. So it's amazing how Allah Azza wa Jalla puts so much emphasis on language, and especially words, right? So what is the ayah after that? In kuntum sadiqeen. And the angel said, no, we don't know anything except what you taught us. Innaka antal alimul hakim. And then, so this part is one of the earliest stories in the Quran where Allah Azza wa Jalla emphasized language. Right? Now we look at other passages in the Quran. The first verse to be reviewed, Iqra, read. It's about language. And in the same surah, the 5th ayah of Surah Al-Alaq, Allah says, "Alladhi 'allama bil qalam." He's the one who taught by the pen. It's about language and words, writing especially. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the first thing to be created by Allah Azza wa Jalla is pen, qalam. And then the first command that Allah Azza wa Jalla ever commanded the pen was uktub, write. Right? Because some people may have this idea that a pen can also be used to paint. So to make that clear, Allah said, "Uktub," write. And the pen asked, "What should I write?" And Allah said, "Everything until the day of judgment." So the decree of all things. It's about language. Even when it comes to da'wah, Allah asked the Prophet ﷺ to say, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. He said, he commanded the Prophet ﷺ to say to the people of the book, "O people of the book, let's all come to kalimatan sawa'in, come to a unified word. Let's come to agreement with a sentence, basically, an utterance, which is la na'budu illallah. We will not worship anything except Allah. وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِهِ شَيْئًا. We will not associate anything with Him. وَلَا نَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا. We will not take any one among us as a partner to Allah." Right? So, even in a Christian tradition, their da'wah, their evangelical effort is called spreading the good word. Right? A priest would say, I've been spreading the word of Jesus for many years. So there's always this interconnection between religion, especially monotheist religion, the God of Abraham, they say, and language, word. There's this strong link. And why is it important? Because, as I mentioned, language gives us ability to think abstractly, to conceive of things that we haven't even seen, or we can't ever see. We can still think about them. And this ability allows us to perceive God and to try to have a connection with God, despite the fact that we can never see Him in this world. In this world, we'll never be able to see Allah Azza wa Jal, but we can manage to worship Him because we can think about Him abstractly because we have language. Animals cannot do this, right? Animals can only conceive of concrete things that they can observe, witnessable things. All right, and this is why it's interesting how Allah Azza wa Jal emphasizes the importance of the unseen, right? Some people have this idea, why doesn't Allah just show us angels and Jannah and Jahannam? It would be so much easier for the prophets and messengers, right? They don't even have to convince. They can just direct. See? See, Allah is there. Believe. It would be much easier. It's true. And then there are examples, there are illustrations in the Quran why Allah doesn't do this, why Allah keeps things unseen. First of all, Musa ﷺ asked Allah to be able to see him. He asked for permission. Allah said, "Look at that mountain. I'll reveal myself a little bit to that mountain. If that mountain stays, then you can see me." He revealed himself a little bit. The mountain collapsed. The mountain crumbled and became pieces and parts. And then Musa ﷺ fainted. He lost consciousness. And then he woke up and he said, I have been a Muslim. I have submitted to you. I have realized that it is impossible right now as a human being to see you. And then we heard about the 10 Commandments. Assalamu alaikum. So there's the 10 Commandments given to Musa alayhi salam. And then the Jewish Bible and the Protestant, the Torah and the Bible have included this part of the 10 Commandments. And there are different wordings since they have different versions of this revelation. But then the second commandment, according to the Jewish Bible, the earliest version of it, it says, basically God says, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." And this commandment still applies in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ told us that you cannot draw any living thing. It's haram to draw any living thing, right? So it's in line with the second commandment given to the Israelites. "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." You cannot paint anything. You cannot make sculpture of anything. Why is this important? Because human beings have this overwhelming tendency towards concrete things. We don't want abstraction. We don't want to, and this tendency is especially over amplified in our age of show business, when everything is on TV, everything is in the format of a movie, of a moving pictures, of visual impact. And I will talk about this a little bit later. But the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited human beings from making images or sculpture is to prevent human beings from downgrading their own mental capacity. Because to see something and to process it is much easier than to conceive of something abstract and to think about it. It's much easier to see something. It's much easier to take information in from images. It's much harder to take information from language, I'm talking right now, and you have to take that in and you have to process it in a higher part of your cognitive faculty, rather than to see an image. And that's why people don't like to do it anymore, because it demands effort, it demands energy, and we are lazy by nature. We are lazy, so we don't want language, we want image. But Allah said no image, no, because He wants to preserve the ability of human beings for abstract thinking, which is the only way through which you can understand God. You cannot understand God if you throw away your ability to think abstractly. And there's a very powerful hadith which will further illustrate this idea. It's recorded by Imam Muslim on the authority of Abu Hurairah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, inna lillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala malaikatan, malaikatan sayyara." Subhanallah, it's interesting. Allah has mobile angels. Sayyara literally means car. Basically, angels that are patrolling around the world. He has patrolling angels. What do they do? يتبعون مجالس ذكر فإذا وجدوا مجلسا فيه ذكر قعودوا معهم وحف بعضهم بعضا بأجنحتهم حتى يمللون ما بينهم وبين السماء. So they would patrol around the world looking for majalis, looking for gatherings of dhikr. Subhanallah. They would go around the world and look for people who are remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, basically. And when they find one, for example this one, when they find one, they would sit with them. They will stop, let's sit here, and they will open their wings and surround these people with their wings until there's no room left, there's no space left between this gathering and the sky. Their wings will cover all of the space between the sky and these people. The special honor of the sitting, the gathering of dhikr, and unfortunately we don't do that anymore. We think we can replace this kind of gathering by watching a YouTube video, which is not true, and I will illustrate that soon. They will sit with them and cover them with their wings, and not only that, فَإِذَا تَفَرَّقُوا عَرَجُوا وَصَعِدُوا إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. When they depart, when these people finish their gathering and they go on with their life, these angels will ascend, go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and report, basically. They will report to Allah that we have found a gathering of people and so and so and so and so were present, and they were doing this form of dhikr, they mention you. And then قَالَ فَيَسْأَلُهُمْ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. Allah will ask them, وَهُوَ أَعْلَمْ بِهِمْ. And Allah is all aware. So you find a lot of hadiths where it says Allah asks, and then it will be followed by but Allah is all aware. So which means that this asking is not for information, this asking is for teaching purposes. So He asked the angels, مِنْ أَيْنَ جِئْتُمْ? Where did you come from? فَيَقُولُونَ جِئْنَا مِنْ عِنْدِ عِبَادٍ لَكَ في الأرض يسبحونك ويكبرونك ويحللونك ويحمدونك ويسألونك. We came from a bunch of your slaves. We came from a group of your slaves that were doing tasbih. They were saying subhanallah. That were doing tahleel. They were saying la ilaha illallah. That were doing tahmeed. They were saying alhamdulillah. That were doing takbir. They were saying alhamdulillah. And they were asking you. They were making dua to you. This was the description of the gathering of dhikr, right? So we should do all of these things just so that we can be included in this category. So we say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu akbar, and we ask Allah for His mercy. And then Allah will say, قَالَ وَمَاذَا يَسْأَلُونِي? What do they ask of me? Allah asks, what do they ask of me? قَالُوا يَسْأَلُونَكَ جَنَّتَكَ. They ask you for your paradise, for heaven. قَالَ وَهَلْ رَأَوْا جَنَّتِي. And He asked, have they seen my Jannah? Have they seen my paradise? قَالُوا لَا أَيْ رَبِّي. No, of course not. They haven't seen Jannah. And Allah asked a rhetorical question, which required no answer. قَالَ فَكَيْفَ لَوْ رَأَوْا جَنَّتِي. So what would it be if they were to see my Jannah? They haven't seen Jannah, they're already asking for it. So what would it be if they were to see it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this expression is almost bragging about human beings. Allah is proud of human beings. He's showing to angels that, look at these people. They haven't seen paradise and they're asking for it. How amazing is this? How amazing is the fact that they can feel a desire for something that they haven't seen at all. And this shows that we are in another hadith actually. it's mentioned that human beings are better than angels because of this, because we can desire things that we don't have. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, to save time, I will save the Arabic. Allah asked the angels, and what are they asking? So the angels say they are also asking for your protection. Allah says, protection from what? Narak ya Rab, from your fire, oh Allah. And Allah says, have they seen my fire? They say no. And Allah again proudly says, what would it be if they were to see my fire? Right? So Allah is proud of the fact that we can't see something but still feel certain emotions towards it. This is actually a high-level cognitive capacity that even perhaps angels don't have. Because angels fear Allah and love Allah and worship Allah because they are in the constant presence of Allah. They see Allah. And if human beings were to see Allah, every human being would have no excuse to worship Allah, right? But a selection, a small minority among human beings choose to worship Allah despite the fact that we can't see Him. And this is why they deserve Jannah. This is why they deserve rewards in the hereafter. They are better now than the angels because of this ability. And then, I just want to mention this last part, although it's not related to today's topic, but subhanAllah, this shows the mercy of Allah. So the angels will again say, they also ask you for your forgiveness. They beg you for your forgiveness. And Allah says, I grant pardon to them. I have forgiven them and confer upon them what they ask for and grant them protection against which they seek protection. So basically, Allah is saying that whatever they ask for, I have given to them because of this gathering. And then the angels would say, subhanAllah, they would say, but our Lord, at this part I want to read the Arabic. So they will say, فَيَقُولُونَ رَبِّي فِيهِمْ فُلَانٌ عَبْدٌ خَطَّاءٌ. There was a person among them who was a sinner, who has a lot of wrongdoing, who has made a lot of mistakes. إِنَّمَا مَرَّ فَجَلَسَ مَعَهُمْ. He was actually just walking by, and he saw this bunch of people, so he sat down. Like he wasn't even intending to be a part of dhikr. He was just passing by, and perhaps a friend called him, brother, please come, we're having a dhikr, can you sit down with us? So he sat down. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I also grant him pardon. He didn't even ask for forgiveness, but I also forgive him because he sat with a group of people that were fortunate. So he was a lucky one, basically. SubhanAllah, this shows us that the blessing of attending a group of dhikr, a majlis of dhikr, is not only in the fact that you can learn knowledge, or you can gain something that can change your behavior or your action. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we go to a khutbah, sometimes we go to a lecture or a sharing, and we don't really change. But there's still good in it. Allah forgive you without you even asking, just because of the virtue of that kind of gathering. Alright, so coming back to our topic. So there are multiple examples of why Allah Azza wa Jal intentionally wants to keep certain things unseen, so that it's not a sensory experience to us, it's a cognitive experience to us. It doesn't involve only the senses or perception, or reception. It involves the thinking, the mind, and the perception. So these are some examples. And then also think about the fact that throughout human history, revelation has always been in the form of words, right? So all the previous prophets and messengers, they had visible miracles. For example, Musa alayhi salam separated the ocean, and the Jewish people saw that. Isa alayhi salam revived a dead person, and the Christians saw that. So there were a lot of miracles that can be seen among the previous prophets and messengers. And then there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, this is in Sahih al-Bukhari on the authority of Abi Huraira, he said, مَا مِنَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ نَبِيٌّ إِلَّا أُعْطِيَ مَا مِثْلُهُ عَمَنَ عَلَيْهِ الْبَشَرِ. All of the prophets, each one of them has been given something through which the bashar, the ordinary people among them, can believe through. So when they see it, they will know this is a miracle. You must be God's prophet, and I believe you. Every prophet had something like that. And he said, وَإِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ. So the thing that was given to me, what was it? وَحْيًا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ. It was the revelation that Allah has revealed to me. And then he said, فَأَرْجُو أَنْ أَكُونَ أَكْثَرَهُمْ تَابِعًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. So because of that, I expect that I have the largest number of followers on the Day of Judgment. He is saying that basically the revelation is much more compelling an evidence. It's much more powerful a sign. It's much more mesmerizing, a miracle than all of the visible things that Musa alayhi salam performed, or Isa alayhi salam performed, or the grand kingdom of Sulaiman alayhi salam, or any of the visible, or the big ship of Nuh alayhi salam. All of these visible examples were not as powerful as the revelation of our Prophet alayhi salam, the Quran. And the Quran is nothing but words. It's just a collection of words. But he said this is going to guarantee me much more followers than the Jewish people and the Christians. SubhanAllah. So words. Why is this? We have to think. Why is it that words have this power? Because first of all, think about the Jewish people who saw the ocean part. They saw that. They believed in Musa alayhi salam firmly at that moment. And they could be the most pious people on earth at that moment. They could be the people who had the highest level of taqwa, consciousness at that moment. But now they crossed the ocean, right? 40 days passed. What happened? They started worshipping a goat calf. They started worshipping an idol. We are amazed. They just saw that big miracle. What happened? But you know what? If we were in the same case, we might do the same thing. Because a feeling is temporary. You might remember, in your life, you might once watched a movie or watched a video or saw something happening that gave you a strong emotion at the moment. At the moment you were crying, or you were laughing, or you were happy, so happy that you think you don't need anything else at that moment. But then one day passed, 1 month passed, 1 year passed, you can't even remember what happened at that moment. Because feeling is temporary. Feeling doesn't carry on. Feeling doesn't cause a sustainable change in you, right? Whereas understanding is much more long-lasting than that. So if you read, and if you listen to words, and if you process it, because it involves processing all the time. So they say that 1,000 readers, 1,000 Hamlet. Hamlet is a novel written by, actually a drama written by Shakespeare. They say that 1,000 readers, 1,000 Hamlet, which means every reader processes the same words, the same languages differently, according to their own experience, according to their own, understanding. So understanding is very personal, and because it's personal, it lasts much longer. And because it's personal, it can become a part of you. Once it becomes a part of you, it will always be with you. So words last, and this is also why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." Indeed, we have reviewed this reminder, this dhikr, and we will preserve it. We will preserve the words. So, when the Christians talk about the miracles of Jesus, it was not so much impactful anymore because it happened before. Even for the Christians, it's a past story, right? It's just an incident that happened. It doesn't really relate to them. But when we read the words of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran, and when you truly internalize the fact that these are the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator of the words, spoke these words, and now He's speaking these words to you. And then the impact is much more, it's very different, right? So we see videos all the time of people who, when they recite the Quran, they cry. And there are people, when they hear the Quran, of course, understanding is important. When they understand the Quran, they cry. Sometimes they cry because they fear Jahannam. Sometimes they cry because they desire Jannah. Sometimes they cry because Allah talks about the rights of parents, and they are reminded that I have not been treating my parents correctly. Sometimes Allah cry because Allah mentioned when Yusuf ﷺ went through all of those troubles, Allah was watching him, and Allah was helping him. So they cry because they were reminded that I'm going through this trouble, but I'm not alone. Allah is watching me and Allah will help me. So we are reminded of so many relatable experiences due to words, due to our own understanding of words. And that's much more long-lasting and much more impactful than ancient stories and past incidents. The Prophet ﷺ also had other miracles other than the Quran. He had, he used to give khutbah on the trunk of a wood, and then a Sahabi made a pulpit, made a mimbar for him. So he changed his position, and then the trunk of the wood started to cry when he left the trunk. So this is a miracle, and it's a miracle that just by a pointing of the finger, the moon split it and then went back together. It was a miracle how he can foretell so many things. He said this would happen, and this happened in history. All of these were miracles, But none of these miracles were as powerful as the Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of all of what I mentioned earlier about language. It's abstract thinking, it's relatable, it's personal, and it's a higher level of cognitive experience. Now, so we understand as Muslims that words are very important. We always, scholars always talk about hold on to the words of Allah, kalamullah, right? The speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. There's a story, I think a tabi'in among the second generation. There was a very pious man called Al-Asma'i. Once he was going to a Hajj, and he met a robber on the way. So this robber was holding a spear and said, "What do you have with you? Give it to me." He said, "I have nothing but the words of Allah." And he said, "Allah has words? Allah spoke?" So this was a non-Muslim robber. And Asma'i said, "Of course Allah spoke. You think the one who taught us to speak doesn't speak?" So he said, "What did Allah say? Tell me some of the words of Allah." And Al-Asma'i, he was so smart, subhanAllah. He said, he recited the ayah, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ, and in the sky is your provision and what you have been promised. Basically, he was telling the thief that you don't have to steal for your provision. Your provision has been assigned by Allah, it will get to you. Allah has already decreed your provision. وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ, your rizq is in the sky. You don't have to work for it, you don't have to steal it on the earth. So when he heard this, when the thief heard this, he threw down his spear and he said, "How stupid am I? I've been looking for provision, I've been looking for rizq by force, whereas Allah has already provided for me." So he said, "Let's go for Hajj together." He joined him. This is the power of words. There are so many examples of this among the Sahaba, how words changed them, right? Words were thunderous to them. When Umar, as the Khalifa, once somebody, an ignorant person said something that really enraged him. He was so angry. He was about to hit that person. And we know when Umar hits a person, he can die. So, an advisor came to him and recited an ayah from the Quran. I don't remember the exact wording of that ayah, but it basically expresses the idea that when an ignorant person, offends you, leave them and say salam and leave them, right? So when Umar heard this, he calmed down just by words. Just by words. Nobody has to drag him, nobody has to hold him. Just by listening to the words of Allah, he calmed down. And there were so many examples of this. When, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Umar was very emotional. He couldn't accept the fact. And then Abu Bakr came and he recited the ayah from the Quran, "Ma Muhammadun illa Rasulullah." Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. Before him, many messengers have passed away. If he dies, or if he is killed in battle, or qutila, are you going to turn your heel back away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah is in no need of you, but He is grateful. He is thankful towards those who are grateful. He rewards those who are grateful. So upon hearing this, Umar radiallahu anhu fell to his knees. He said, "It's as if I've never heard these words before." Because words, when related to experience, is just that powerful. There are so many examples of this. And the fact that our tradition, we don't have, an image that boosts our iman, right? We don't have a symbol that boosts our iman. It's very different from the Christians. When the Christians, although this was also invented later on, it was not taught by Jesus, alayhi salam. It was invented later on, but nowadays when Christians are afraid, what do? Right? Astaghfirullah. They have attached divine meaning to symbols or to images. They hold on to their cross as if it can save them, as if this cross has some divine power. It's a form of shirk, as we know, but this is because they have lost attachment with the word itself. And actually, it has started happening in the Muslim world. We know that Ayatul Kursi is a protection, but it's a protection in the power of the words and in your understanding and application of the words, not in a piece of wood with the words written on it, not the object. It started happening because we have lost our understanding that words are the most important. Words affect us. So throughout history, you can say the first 3 generations evidently, they know the importance of words. They teach their kids the Quran before they're 10 years old. Actually, once when the Prophet ﷺ said that I fear Islam will be lost in the later generations, and then the Sahaba said, "Ya Rasulullah, how can Islam be lost when we teach our children the Quran and they will teach their children the Quran? How can Islam be lost?" They understand that the most important thing about our religion is the word of Allah. It's the word, the language. And then once when Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh, he was the governor of Medina for a period of time, and he saw a bunch of young people singing and dancing and playing musical instruments. They were just entertaining themselves, and he heard a person called Zadan singing with a beautiful voice. So he said, ما أحسن هذا الصوت لو كان بقراءة كتاب الله. He said, what a beautiful voice, had it been used to recite the words of Allah. And when this person heard this, he broke his musical instrument and he followed Ibn Mas'ud and said, can I be your student? I want to learn the recitation of the Quran. And he learned and he became a very famous Qari. So throughout history, Muslims understand this fact. But now, starting from the 20th century, it's a very recent event, starting from the last century, so just for about 50 years, or even just 100 years, things started to change, right? Before that, even the non-Muslims, any culture, in any culture, the what do you call it? The foundation of any civilization must be laid on some literature. In America, they take pride in their constitution, which is a great piece of literature. Or I forgot what's the other document's name, but it's written that we stand here and bear witness to the fact that it's self-evident all men are created equal before God. So it's a beautiful piece of literature. And in Britain, you would mention Shakespeare. In Russia, you would mention Toto. In Greek, you would mention Plato and Aristotle. It's all about their writing. It's all about their words, their language. In China, you would mention Confucius. And we don't know how he looks like. We know his words. We know what he said and what he wrote. Every culture, every civilization must be based on some form of literature, some form of literary tradition. And this started to change in the last century. Now when we hear about American culture, we think of Hollywood or Disney. Now when we mention the Indian culture, and India is a civilization with a great legacy. There were great philosophies and great knowledge from India. Right? Buddhism in China is now quite a popular religion, and it came from India. There were no Buddhists in China before the Tang Dynasty, you can say. It came from India. So now we hear about Indian culture, we think about Bollywood movies, or what's his name? There's like famous actors and actresses. We think of a culture from the visible traces, from the entertainment elements. And then in 1985, because of this trend, Dr. Neil Postman wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. It's a very, very good book. He's a Christian. And he observed this transition. He called this transition from the age of typography to the age of show business. So for about 300 years, for 3 centuries, America was the highest reading country in the world. They read the most number of books. They had the highest percentage of literacy, in population comparing to other parts of the world. And he mentioned, there were of course evidences in historic record. He mentioned that fishermen or postmen, mailmen, they would be ready to talk about politics and economy during this time because they read things. They read books, they read newspaper, and they know the word by reading, through reading. It's the age of typography. And he says that he started this book by mentioning the importance of medium. So some people say that, okay, before we read the stories of the Sahaba, and now there are TV series about Umar. I'll tell you why I say that. There are TV series, and in Turkey it's very popular. There are TV series about their heroes. I don't know their names, but the founding father of the Ottoman Empire, for example, and their soldiers, their heroes. There are TV series like this, and some Muslims will say, well, it's just a different way of learning the same things. We used to learn about the Sahaba by reading. Now we learn about the same stories by watching a TV series. It's okay, right? It's the same thing. The book says, no, it's not the same thing. Because what you receive is not only decided by the content, but also the medium of that content. What delivers that content matters, because it changes the way you process and you take in that information. The same piece of information by writing will have a different impact on your mind than that information being delivered to you by words, by spoken words, or by a visual image. Because so our brain has different parts and different faculties. Neuroscientifically speaking, the part that processes images is different from the part that processes words. and involves different mechanisms. So in the age of typography, when people read and when people write, they were forced to be logical. They were forced to examine the argument by the evidences and by the logic behind, and by the by examining if there are any contradictions. For example, if you say A in the first paragraph and you say B in the second paragraph, they would notice the difference. They will see the inconsistencies in your words. And also, when a writer writes, he is also forced to be very serious in his thinking, because he is now targeting an imaginary audience, an invisible audience that he doesn't know. It's a conversation between the writer and any possible person. So he has to write very carefully. He has to write with reason, with as much objectivity as possible. He has to write with evidence, with examples. He has to write with clear language and long sentence structures to express the complexity and complications of the matter at hand. And the author give the example of the debate between Abraham Lincoln and Douglas, two very prominent figures, political figures at the time. They had a 3-hour-long debate. Actually, I think it's a 7-hour-long debate. They had a 7-hour-long debate, and they had a break in between for people to go back home and have dinner and then come back to continue the debate. And their debate were written at first. So they have very long sentences that would take up 4 to 5 lines on a written page, but they would just utter that. And nowadays, when you see the campaign in America, when you see the debates between Bernie Sanders, for example, when you see the speeches of Donald Trump, they intentionally make their language very plain. They intentionally make their language very short and very emotionally eliciting, but doesn't really say anything. Yes, we can is the campaign slogan for Obama. It doesn't say anything. Make America great again is the slogan for Donald Trump. It doesn't say anything. You don't get any information from this slogan. It doesn't talk about the plans for it. It doesn't talk about what problems do we have, when were we great, and how can we be great again. All of these are relevant information, but it's not there. We will build a wall. Yes, that's very emotionally eliciting. People will applaud to that, the supporters. They will be emotionally manipulated, but it doesn't really say anything, right? So he gave the example, when during the age of typography, every speaker has to think about the content much more than the style. Every speaker, because the audience at the time, in the age of typography, were trained by not TV figures, not by talk shows, not by movies. Those audience were trained by books. So they have very high standards for your utterance. They have very high standards and requirements for what you say. And they can process long sentence structures. So you can express very complicated sentences slowly, which is not what I'm doing. I'm also using very plain language. But for them, they can use long sentences, right, predicated on logical discussion, and the audience were ready to receive that. Now, after telegraph, two things, telegraph and photograph were invented. This has changed the medium. Telegraph made instancy more important than content, right? Previously, people have to write books for years. When Karl Marx wrote the 资本论, what is it called in English? The thing about capitalism, his thesis on capitalism, it took him, I think, 20 to 30 years. When you read about some novels of Russian authors, they wrote it for 20 to 30 years. The great pieces of literature in the past took the authors 20 to 30 years, several decades. But then when telegraph comes, you can communicate instantly, right? I can receive a piece of information from another state, another part of the world instantly, and then the newspapers started competing for instancy instead of the value of the information. So I'll just tell you what happened just now. But does it matter to you? I don't care, right? Just the fact that I can give you a piece of information that is fresh already shows value in the new age of show business. And then photograph, as I already mentioned, it makes information decontextualized, discontinuous, and decontextualized, discontinuous, and what? There's a third thing. I forgot. Basically, irrelevant. Yes, irrelevant to you. So the information-action ratio is significantly degraded after the age of show business. Previously, when people read newspaper, in 18th century, for example, when they read local newspaper in their city, that will affect their action during the day. For example, the mail office is temporarily closed for renovation. They will not go to the mail office that day. It affects their action. It has an impact on how they live their life. Even about economy, the price of vegetables, the price of potato is up by $30 today. That will affect their choice of vegetables for dinner. But nowadays, we seem to have a lot of information coming to us. We have so many free media. We learn about what's happening in Yemen, what happened in Saudi Arabia, what happened in Syria. How does it affect your daily behavior? Nothing. How does that change the way you live your life? Doesn't really affect anything. And then what's worse is that once we are accustomed to that it doesn't matter to me attitude or mindset, eventually our perspective towards the word becomes one of indifference. And this is terrible. When we, previously in the age of typography, when someone comes to you and says there was a murder in our neighborhood, in our community, you would be shocked. You would be so emotional, and you would be scared. There are a lot of emotions to it. Now, when a news anchor, in a very plain tone and in a very neutral and normal face, and in 45 seconds, bite-sized news, right? Because this is also one requirement of the show business. It has to be fast, it has to be quick, it has to be short, it has to be attention-grabbing. So the news anchor comes and says, there has been a bomb attack in Iraq and 45 people were killed, and the police is coming with more information. You don't feel any emotion anymore. 45 people died, as if nothing happened. So the show business is training us to be indifferent to things in the world, as if they're irrelevant. Discontinuous, fragmented, decontextualized, low information to action ratio, and our perspective towards the word changed. And then there is one chapter in this book. If you don't read the whole book, I encourage you to read that chapter, which is specifically about religion. So in page 118, please give me a minute. And also another thing is, nowadays if you do a sharing like this, you have to constantly continue to talk. If you pause for a second, people will take their phone and start checking their WhatsApp. So speakers are also forced to speak all the time, and then that doesn't give them time to process their information. So he mentioned that, and this has happened in Christianity much earlier before the Muslim world, but it's now also happening in the Muslim world. So religion also became less serious because of the television culture. Now, he says that it's not only that our culture becomes televised, it is actually television has become our culture. So the way we perceive everything is that everything has to be entertaining and amusing and attention-grabbing. And he gave many examples of this. So there are many traits of television shows, right? There are a lot of change of shots. Very seldom do you see a fixed camera pointing at one person talking all the time, unless it's a presidential address, it's president talking, yes, or unless it's a university professor's lecture, then yes, it's a fixed camera. But any other kind of TV show, the talk show, the political debates, movies, TV series, every 4 to 5 seconds they will change the shot. Every 4 to 5 seconds, a different thing shown on TV. That to fixate your eyes on the screen, and it doesn't give you any time to think. It doesn't give you any time to process that information. So you're just taking in passively. He talks about religion, and he says, there's a Christian priest who argued against. So even at that time, in late. In late 20th century, there was already a debate among the Christian community. Should we bring our religious matters and religious rituals, for example, on TV? Should we have TV programs, for example, of evangelical nature? Should we invite people to Jesus through TV programs? There was a debate about this in the late 20th century, and this is from a person who is in favor of this notion, in favor of televised Christianity. He said, to say that the church shouldn't be involved with television is utterly foolish. The needs are the same, the message is the same, but the delivery can change. It would be folly for the church not to get involved with the most formative force in America. And the author replied, this is gross technological naive. If the delivery is not the same, then the message quite likely is not the same, because the delivery has an impact on the message. And if the context in which the message is experienced is altogether different from what it was in Jesus' time, we may assume that its social and psychological meaning is different as well. So he had two conclusions about televised religious matters. The first has to do with the fact that there is no way to consecrate the space in which a television show is experienced. He basically said there's a reason why we have places of worship. There's a reason why when you enter a place of worship, even if it's not your religion, when you go to a church, when you go to a synagogue, you feel a sense, an ethos of sacredness. When you go to even a Buddhist temple, which involves shirk, you feel a sense of sacredness. You feel a compulsion to speak with a low voice. You feel a compulsion to respect the building and the people inside. You feel a natural tendency to be very, conscious of your actions. You don't eat in a church, even if you're a Muslim. You go to a church, you naturally watch your behavior. So the places of worship, one of the he calls it a religious aura, right? The feeling at all, the feeling in large. Almost any place will do, provided it is first decontaminated, that is, divested of its profane uses. But now when we watch a khutbah on YouTube, for example, let's bring it back to Islam. When we watch a lecture on YouTube, even if the thing that, the environment around which it happened in reality was a good environment, even if it was in a masjid that a talk speaker gave, but you're watching it on YouTube, right? So you can eat chips, you can drink Coke, you can pause it and go to the bathroom and come back again and continue to watch the khutbah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So the aura, the ethos of sacredness and seriousness is taken away. When you watch even the Hujjaj in Mecca, nowadays you have live video for this, right? You can watch them praying Fajr prayer. You can listen to the recitation of the Imam of the Haram, and you don't feel serious anymore, because you're watching the video and then your friend called you, you pause it and you take the call, and then you joke about your daily affairs, and you joke about many things, and you put the phone down, you continue to watch that video. The sacredness is taken away. This is the first thing, the first big problem about the television culture when it comes to religion. And alhamdulillah, Muslims haven't gone that far yet, but it started happening. There are many YouTube channels nowadays in Britain, started by young people. They claim to be for Dawa. They claim that these YouTube videos are for Dawa, and they do the so-called social experiments, which is nothing different from a television show in America. It's just for fun and for entertainment. And they attack each other on these YouTube videos that claim to be for truth. And then they use, profane language. They were angry sometimes. They're very emotional. There are YouTube channels like this. And it has basically made religion more like entertainment than a sacred and serious thing. So he concludes by saying, if an audience is not immersed in an aura of mystery and symbolic otherworldliness, then it is unlikely that it can tell forth the state of mind required for a non-trivial religious experience. So when you are in your own room and you have, and especially when you're watching something on YouTube, it suggests you other things, right? It takes your attention away. It's different from when you're in a masjid listening to a lecture. You cannot escape. You have to focus. You're forced to. So, okay, action plan for Muslims. Let's try to go to gatherings like this more often, right? Let's try to go to a sacred place, a place of worship, which has that aura, so that we can be more touched in our consciousness, not only to be entertained. And nowadays, there's also this trend that Muslims tend to watch speakers that tell more jokes than serious things. One of the most underrated speaker, one of my favorite speaker, Ustad Ali Hamouda, his YouTube videos has normally 30 to 40 likes, right? And when you watch Nu'man Ali Khan, Sheikh Kamal al-Makki, Mufti Mink, thousands of likes, tens of thousands of views. And you know what? There are video clips on YouTube called Mufti Mink jokes. Akhi,
Really?
you don't watch him for jokes. You watch him for knowledge. If there's a joke, okay, good. Sometimes it revives the mood and gives you the motivation to keep watching. But to search for Norma Ali Khan jokes is a whole different business. Now you have changed your attitude towards your religion altogether. To search for halal jokes, to search for Islamic entertainment is a different thing. And it has become more and more common in our time. So we have to go against this tendency. So the second conclusion from the author about religion and television culture, the culture of show business, is that the change of content. And this was in 1985. There was no YouTube then. He was talking about television programs, cable TV, and he was already so worried. We should be more worried. Give me 5 minutes and I'll finish. I'll just read to you some statistics I remembered. Every minute, 400 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube. We watch over 1 billion hours of YouTube videos a day. Collectively, human beings watch over 1 billion hours of videos a day. And, wait, let me see. On average, there are 1 billion mobile video views per day. By mobile phone, 1 billion. 81% of US parents use YouTube to find content for their children. 1 in 5 YouTube users say it is very important for helping them understand things that are happening in the world. 1 in 5 YouTube user. So now we are learning about the world through YouTube, through short clip videos, not through experience anymore. And that has all the dangers that I have no time to talk about. But the second thing about televised religious matter is that, So because of the pressure from maintaining a program on TV or a YouTube channel, for example, you want audience, right? You want followers, you want likes, you want clicks, and then it is inevitable that no matter what intention the creator of these platforms have, they must consider marketing. They need to think about marketing. They need to maintain their platform. So to achieve this goal, the most modern methods of marketing and promotion are abundantly used. He is giving an example of the Christian channels and the Christian talk shows, such as offering free pamphlets, Bibles, and gifts, and in Jerry Falwell's case, 2 free Jesus First pins. So religion has become a way to attract people, and a way to attract people to continuously attend these shows, but not to improve themselves. And then you can get your share of the audience only by offering people something they want, right? Religion becomes a business, and a business always has to consider the market demand. So what do you like? I'll provide more of that. What do you want? I'll provide more of that. And it started to happen in the Muslim community as well, right? The famous speakers, when they're invited to a gathering, they were given a topic. And sometimes the topic given is not really informative. Sometimes the topic given is more entertaining than it is informative, and it's bad, right? And there are topics that people don't like to hear about. Jahannam, right? The things that will happen in hellfire. People don't like to talk about that, and you will see that it's occurring less and less on YouTube because it's a market-driven business. So if religion becomes something that we consider mostly what the market wants, what the people want, then it will be corrupt eventually. You will note, I am sure, that this is an un-Euro religious credo, so the fact that they have to market, they have to consider market demand. There is no Greek religious leader, from the Buddha to Moses to Jesus to Muhammad alayhi wassalam, to Luther, who offered people what they want. No, only what they need. This is very important. The religious leaders, the prophets and messengers, they told people some hard truth. They told people things that would scare them, but they had to, because the truth is sometimes hard. But then the televised culture, the age of show business, prevents people from telling people what might scare them away, because the whole point of show business is to attract people and make money out of it. So, who offered people? But television is not well suited to offering people what they need. It is user friendly. It is too easy to turn off. It is at its most alluring when it speaks the language of dynamic visual imagery. It does not accommodate complex language or stringent demands. As a consequence, what is preached on television is not anything like the Sermon on the Mount. Religious programs are filled with good cheer. They celebrate affluence. Their featured player becomes celebrities through their messages. Though their messages are trivial, the shows show high ratings, or rather, because their messages are trivial, the shows have high ratings. All right. I'm coming to the end of my talk. I have limited time. So, to summarize the point, now that we've seen this trend from typography to show business, from language and words and abstract thinking to visual impact and imagery and entertainment, right? Everything has to be packed in the form of entertainment to receive audience and to attract attention. And one good example of that will be the videos, YouTube videos that have jokes, even if it's a khutbah, are much more viewed than talks about more serious issues. So we have to go against this trend rather than to conform to it. There are some people who hold the opinion that, just like what the reverend, the Christian person said in the book, oh, it's just a different delivery, just a different method of conveying the same message. It's still Islam. Now we just pack it in the form of jokes, or pack it in the form of entertainment, TV shows, TV series, Smile to Jannah, things like that. The problem is, you think you are delivering the same information, but because of the medium, the information is processed differently. When a piece of information is offered in a serious setting that has an aura, an ethos of sacredness and seriousness, people also take it seriously, right? This is why we probably have more knowledge about the Quran than some of the Sahaba. They know one surah or one ayah, some of them. One Bedouin man came to Abu Bakr, I think, and he asked him, have you heard anything from the Prophet ﷺ? He said, yes, I heard one hadith. Because maybe he's only met him once. I heard one hadith from him, and I have remembered it since then until now, right? So because of the seriousness of the medium of delivery, the Prophet ﷺ was always serious when he delivers khutbahs. The humorous incidents that we found were not humorous by intention; they were humorous by conveniently. So he was not making a point to have fun. He was talking about something, and he talked about it in a humorous manner, but he was not trying to be funny, basically. He was trying to teach, and then it turned out to be funny, then it's okay. So what we should do is to revive that serious tradition. It doesn't mean that we cannot tell jokes anymore, but it means that we cannot turn our religion into a joke. It doesn't mean that we cannot have fun in our religion, but it means we cannot have our religion just to have fun. Right? We have to separate those two things. The truth is sometimes harsh. To be closer to Allah is sometimes demanding and tiring, and you just have to deal with that. I'm a teacher. Sometimes the school management tells me that we're living in this age of media, so we should play more videos, play more games with the students, have more pictures in your PowerPoint, involve them more visually. And I say no. Learning still primarily comes from reading. And we can't spoil them. We can't strip that away from them just because watching a movie or a video is more convenient. We can't just conform to the trend. So, especially as people of intellect, if you're a person who is only concerned with worldly benefits, then yes, conform to the trend. It's very convenient. If you want to be rich nowadays, it's very easy. Just pack yourself to be a celebrity, right? If I want this video to be watched by more people, I'll start with a joke. I'll have very fiery speeches. I'll have emotions. I'll have a lot of examples that can relate to you. I'll talk about many people you heard of. That's easy. To become a celebrity, you just have all of the dramatic effects, all of the talk show elements. You just make yourself, you suit yourself into that model. But then, as people of intellect, and Muslims should be people of intellect, as Muslims, we should consider what is good for people. Not what is most convenient, and not what everyone is doing. Everyone was doing idol worshipping before Islam. It doesn't make it right. So, what is right for us is actually to revive that tradition of that literary tradition of reading and writing. Go back to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just nowadays we have a YouTube channel called Quran Visualization, and this is another good example of Quran visualization. Because we don't want to even read the Quran anymore. We want to watch the Quran. We don't want to listen to the Quran anymore. We want to watch the Quran. We want to see the images as being described by the Quran. And then that reduces you to a passive receiver. You're not even contemplating anymore. You're not doing tadabbur anymore. You're not doing, the actions that Allah requires of you in the Quran, which is to think. So, yeah, the message is clear. Words are powerful. Words are powerful. They have impacted the early generations of the Muslims tremendously, so it can still impact us. And if we are too accustomed to the show business culture, it will distance us from our religion. It will distance us from taqwa and consciousness of Allah Azza wa Jal. It will distance us from the seriousness of religion. It will distance us from implementation of the religion. It will distance us from acting upon what is taught. We will be more aware of, and it will distance us from internalizing the teachings. We can know the teachings very well by entertainment, but we can't work on them until we take it seriously. All right, I don't think I did a very good job explaining all of this, but inshallah, hopefully you get some of the message. So, yeah, eventually, last advice, watch less YouTube, read more, read the books of the early scholars, and when you watch YouTube, okay, then if you do watch YouTube, then create a serious environment for yourself. Don't eat and drink and don't cut your fingernail while you're watching a YouTube khutbah. And don't check your WhatsApp message every now and then when you're watching a YouTube video. Create that sense of seriousness for yourself, even if you have to do that. And watch less movies. And although some people might consider this fundamentalist, why we can't even watch movies, we can't even watch TV shows. It's not that you can't, it's that it's harmful to you. So if you are a smart person, if you're intelligent, you will abstain from it for your own good, inshallah. And it's advice for myself as well. I've suffered from it, that's why I'm telling you. I have experience, I have a time in my college time, 2 years of my university life, where I stayed away from entertainment entirely. No TV show, no movies, no Facebook. I stayed away from major social media as well. And whenever, my entertainment was to watch the lectures of speakers on YouTube. And that way I excluded myself from the show business culture around the world. And I felt such a strong sense of taqwa. I felt so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during those 2 years. And then after I graduated, pressure of life comes in, peer pressure comes in, the stress of life comes in. And I started, sometimes I'm thinking, well, we're more than Muslims, we can watch a movie every now and then. And we select the movies that are halal. But no, it takes you away from that tranquil and peaceful mood. It takes you into a mood of entertainment. It makes you want to entertain yourself and relax. It takes away your self-discipline. So since I've experienced both ways, and now that I've compared, I'm speaking from experience, watch less movies. And eventually don't watch movies. People say, no, I learn things from watching movies. You can learn things from reading books, I guarantee you. Everything you can learn from movies, you can learn from books, I guarantee you. And it's a much better way of reading books. So inshallah, let us become people of words again. Inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.